Now, let's analyze them further. I'm joined by David Bruce from the Institute for Security Studies. David, good afternoon. Just an overriding question first. When you look at the stats, sometimes you get this sinking feeling that some crimes are continuing to get worse.
Well, that's right. I mean, I would say that the first crime category that we should focus on are the murder statistics. And I think, without any question, the trends are that rates of murder in South Africa have now continued to get worse over a sustained period of time, dating back to about more than 10 years. So, I would say that if we look at what's happening on the terrain of electricity in this country at the moment, and there is at last serious recognition that we have a serious crisis in terms of electricity supply and so on. And it's time for there to be a recognition of a similar kind, that our situation in terms of violent crime is, of that order. It's incredibly serious situation, and it calls for a qualitatively different type of response from governments in terms of how it addresses the problem.
Now, David, just on that, I mean, 7,555 people murdered between October and December last year, and then in that number, more than 3,100 of them were shot dead. I mean, that also speaks to this worrying trend of a spike in gun violence.
Right, yes. Well, I would absolutely agree with that point, that firearm-related violence is a critical part of the problem. And again, it raises this issue of, a far more purposeful response from government to addressing that aspect of the problem. At the same time, what I would also emphasize, and what isn't clearly enough reflected in the statistics, is that, this varies quite widely from one province to another. So the contribution of firearm violence in some provinces and in some areas of the country is far greater than others. And, and part of what I would look to government for in terms of, a more coherent response to the overall problem of violence is a greater recognition of the differences between these different parts of the country, and a response to violence and crime which is more, more solidly grounded in what is happening in the different parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, tragically, a young man, the rapper eNCA, being shot dead just last week in Durban. Yet again, another very clear illustration or example of how bad gun violence is. Now, you say you're going to look to government to do certain things. Just to pick your brain, David, around gun violence. I mean, more than 20 guns find themselves in circulation. It's illegal arms. And it looks like the biggest challenge is the number of illegal guns that are in circulation. Government has tried through a number of other measures in the past to get rid of these illegal guns, police as well, but they're seemingly not winning this battle.
Right. Well, you see, I mean, I think it's evident that the critical issue is about what is the core point of supply of illegal firearms. And it's apparent that the core, the main source of where illegal firearms come from is legal firearms, the theft of legal firearms and so on. So, it seems that the issue can't be reduced to simply an issue of illegal firearms, that there is a need for an overall far more effective regime for control of access to firearms in South Africa.
Yeah, and then the other challenges, of course, would be how do you make sure that, because even in our schools, and the minister spoke to a particular number, or Mr. Mkhwana, Mrs. Kukuni, the manager, speaking to also the fact that educational institutions in our country are not free as well from violent contact crime.
Certainly, I mean, I would think that, that should certainly be recognized as part of the problem. But, what I would just want to emphasize again is, that there is, to some degree, what we are getting from, in terms of the type of analysis that is being provided, is something that is kind of being recycled. Government, has a certain kind of almost like a kind of template for analyzing the crime problem. There isn't any real indication that government is moving forward in deepening its understanding of the problem of crime. And so, this gets back to the point that I raised at the beginning, that there's a need for a qualitatively different engagement by government with the overall problem of crime, and particularly the problem of violent crime in South Africa. And, so, it should no longer be regarded as acceptable for government to simply go on reproducing a kind of certain established kind of template for reporting on crime. We need deeper understanding from government and a more fully considered strategic response.
Thank you very much for your time. That's David Bruce from the Institute for Security Studies. Just some of the initial reactions we're bringing you this afternoon here on eNCA to the latest crime stats that were released a short while ago this afternoon by the Minister of Police, Bheki.